Pajama Populism Unraveled, How the GOP's 2026 Meltdown Exposed a Party Out of Touch. Imagine a political party that promised to drain the swamp, spending a fortune bulldozing the White House. Now imagine that same party losing big elections everywhere from Virginia to New Jersey to New York City. Would that make you wonder whose priorities really came first, the billionaire boss or the struggling family at home? Perhaps. But for Donald Trump and his GOP colleagues, the answer is already settled. It's not their fault. Instead, they point fingers at anyone but themselves. Fake polls, Marxist Democrats, an unforgivable government shutdown. Spoiler alert, voters aren't buying it. Today we break down the aftermath of the 2026 off-year elections like an episode of The Daily Show. We'll dig into Trump's finger-pointing catalog, GOP wipeouts in blue and purple states, and expose the flimsy excuses from snap scaremongering to flim-flam healthcare lies. Then we'll dive into the grand symbol of all this, Trump's infamous $350 million White House ballroom, a vanity project unmoored from real Americans' worries. Along the way, we'll court real folks with placeholders for you to insert Vox Populi clips, exit polls, and headlines that prove Democrats won on pocketbook issues, while Republicans stuck to stale culture wars and conspiracy theater. Finally, we'll circle back to you, the audience, asking what does leadership really mean? Is it about golden ballrooms and laser light rallies, or about accountability and addressing real pain? We'll challenge viewers. Are you tuned into reality or still watching the greatest show on earth? Spoiler, this one's a horror comedy. And by the end, we'll remind you to like, subscribe, and share if you too think politics should finally focus on something other than the ego of one man. Buckle up, it's satire with science, humor with headlines, and hopefully a few belly laughs about one very expensive ballroom. One, Trump's denial and blame game. If we lost, it had nothing to do with us. So, cue the tacky Trump rally music and the presidential ballroom playlist. The election losses happened on Tuesday, and by Wednesday morning, Donald Trump had already delivered the official GOP post-mortem. Turns out, it's everybody else's fault. He wasn't on the ballot. Who knew elections worked that way? And that pesky government shutdown, clearly only hurting Democrat areas. When will we ever learn to blame the Democrats and the media for everything? Trump's spin machine went into overdrive immediately. At a Wednesday Senate lunch, he lectured his own party that nothing was wrong with Republicans. They were just not on the ballot. In his words, that was the biggest factor in every loss. Apparently, sheriffs and tax collectors across America also have the power to declare that you win elections by simply staying home and complaining. He doubled down on blame for the House GOP's wipeout in swing states like Virginia and New Jersey by citing the ongoing government shutdown. If you read the pollsters, the shutdown was a big factor, Trump told reporters. Translation, my bad, I voted to shut down the government, but nothing to do with me. It was Democrats who made it longest ever, and that hurt them, not us. Notably, an NBC News poll found 52% of voters blamed Trump and the GOP for the shutdown versus 42% blaming Democrats. But facts can't drown a good grievance. Nearby White House Deputy Chief of Staff James Blair reassured Politico that Trump is keyed into what's going on, and he's promising to get very, very focused on prices and cost of living. If by very, very focused, he means insisting our grocery bills miss Trump, echoing a viral rally sign, then sure, mission accomplished. But back to the blame game. Trump insisted it was very Democrat areas that lost and told his crew it was not expected to be a victory. We expected to lose in California and New York, so no harm, no foul. Meanwhile, GOP voices at ground level were crying foul too. Kentucky Sen, Rand Paul, warned that midterms without Trump are inherently tough, a self-fulfilling prophecy for mobilizing turnout. And Missouri's Josh Hawley sighed, it just remains to be seen if working class voters turn out when Trump is not on the ballot. In other words, our only voters show up for Trump. If he's not there, well, maybe our voters just stay home. Senator, that's not a strategy. That's a riddle. But Trump's task force of excuse makers marched on undaunted. Here's the bottom line. Republicans lost, and the official line is not our fault. He wasn't even a candidate this time, so lucky us. As Newsweek reported, Trump flatly told his allies the losses were because he wasn't on the ballot. He was honored they said so, bragging, "I was honored that they said I wasn't on the ballot." Yes, that's what passes for humility these days. Meanwhile, Congress is still shut down Trump's, and millions of Americans remain without pay or benefits. If that bothers you, just remember it's actually a winning strategy for Democrats, apparently. 2. Wipe out 100. And 1 GOP loses big in Virginia, New Jersey, NYC, even California. Let's pan the camera nationwide. The GOP got clobbered. First, the Virginia horror show. In an election framed as a check on Trump's agenda, Virginians swept every statewide office to the Democrats. Former Rep. Abigail Spanberger unseated Lieutenant Gov. Winsome Earl-Sears for governor in a rout 57% to 43%. Democrat Ghazal Hashmi became lieutenant governor, and Democrat Jay Jones won attorney general, making Virginia blue once more. The State House? Now a supermajority for Democrats, largest in decades. Former GOP Governor Glenn Youngkin wouldn't blame his policies, instead lamenting a federal shutdown that left Virginians worried about mortgages and rents, worried about how they're going to feed their families. But voters had a message. They chose change over chaos. Next up, New Jersey. Despite Gov. Phil Murphy coasting to re-election, the bigger surprise was in Trenton. Democrat Mickey Sherrill crushed Trump-backed Jack Ciattarelli. Sherrill beat Ciattarelli by around 10 points. This wasn't supposed to happen in a state Trump nearly flipped in 2024. In a victory speech, she thanked voters for fighting on, saying, "We knew it was going to be a tough fight. I know your struggles, your hopes, and your dreams." She sounded like a rock star to Democrats, a vision to Republicans. How about New York City? The Big Apple shocked pundits by electing Zohran Mamdani, a 3-4-year-old Democratic socialist, as mayor. Mamdani's campaign promised to freeze rents and make transportation free, a sharp pivot from traditional city politics. New Yorkers, who've moved sharply left on some issues, delivered what voters said was a mandate for change in Manhattan. Incumbent Democratic establishment favorite Andrew Cuomo ran as an independent and barely made a dent. So even Deep Blue NYC turned on business-as-usual Democrats in favor of a starry-eyed reformer. The GOP nominee, Curtis Sliwa, barely registered. Mamdani himself crowed, "Tonight you delivered a mandate for change, a city we can afford, a government that delivers." For context, Trump's NYC approval was underwater all year. Polls showed 65% disapproval. Maybe not so shocking that Democrats added NYC to their wins. Meanwhile, far west in California, Democrats claimed a smaller but symbolic victory. Proposition 50, a constitutional amendment pushed by Gavin Newsom, passed easily. It allowed California to redraw its congressional maps to essentially throw a lifeline to House Democrats opposing a GOP effort to sneakily increase Republican seats. Newsom framed Prop 50 as protection of fair elections. Donald Trump does not believe in fair and free elections, period and full stop, he said triumphantly. By voting yes on Prop 50, California Democrats gave Trump's influence the finger. And let's not forget the smaller battles. Ohio passed even stricter abortion limits on 2024's referendum, a shocker in a swing state. Minnesota Republicans lost key legislative races, and elsewhere Democrats snagged a couple Pennsylvania Supreme Court seats. In short, red wave, more like maroon flood. Fox News summed it up under a Lozers banner. Republican candidates across the board failed to rally enough support, handing Democrats massive wins from the Virginia Attorney General race to Pennsylvania's Supreme Court. In exit polls, voters made their priorities clear. Economy was king. Over 60% of New Jersey voters cited the economy or taxes as their main concern. In Virginia, a CBS exit poll found 57% for Spanberger, including nearly 60% of independents, with almost half saying cost of living was the top issue. And in NYC, a majority told pollsters that affordability was the leading concern, sending the city a left-wing firebrand promising kitchen table relief. These results were so lopsided that even Democratic analysts like Kate Scanlon, reporting for OSB News, couldn't ignore the theme. Voters in Virginia, New Jersey, New York City were motivated by cost of living increases, an area of Catholic social concern. As one Ohio State pollster put it, the unifying thread to all three election outcomes is affordability. In plain terms, this wasn't about moral panic or identity politics. It was about who will take care of your wallet. The GOP's fingerprints are all over these defeats. In Virginia and New Jersey, Democrats were already running on lowering costs. Republicans ran or tried to on culture issues. In New Jersey, Ciattarelli's campaign was overshadowed by a gubernatorial referendum on Medicaid work requirements, which gave Democrats a free campaign slogan of "Protect Healthcare for the Poor." In New York, former MAGA mayoral hopeful Curtis Sliwa was cut out of the narrative by one against all odds socialist. And in California, GOP redistricting plans were smoked out by Democrats on Prop 50. In short, this election cycle was a national referendum on Trumpism. Spoiler, it failed. Even governors who had trumpeted Trump-inspired policies, like Virginia's Youngkin, ended up conceding defeat. Democrats celebrated victories long before the clock struck midnight, Fox News noted. And if Democrats were on the verge of post-election breakdowns in 2024, by 2025, they were actually leaning forward with full-throated winners in Virginia, NJ, NYC, and a defensive victory in California. The GOP's only safe harbor was a big state like Texas. Otherwise, they underperformed Republicans in hard-fought districts under Trump in 2020. As Virginia political scientist David Richards observed, Democrats did well by sticking to pocketbook issues that voters seemed concerned about, while GOP culture war themes did not work as well. That's how you rebuild after a loss, by forgetting the culture war and remembering the wallet war. Instead, Republicans went silent or doubling down on rhetoric. 3, spin doctors on duty shut down snap horror stories and healthcare lies. It's the day after the election, and Republican talking points are being spun like a selfie stick. Segment by segment, House and Senate Republicans are desperately trying to change the channel. First on the scapegoat list is the government shutdown. Trump's playbook is to make the shutdown the story. He told conservative lawmakers the shutdown was a big factor costing GOP seats. Good luck selling that. Ironically, that's because he insisted on the shutdown, even promising farm bailouts during it. House Speaker Mike Johnson gave a dramatic conspiratorial press conference. He demanded Democrats agree to a short-term spending bill with no controversies attached, basically begging them to cave. When reporters raised that his list of demands, border wall, work requirements, no union pay, etc., was unrealistic, Johnson dug in. We need 5 more Democrats in the Senate to do the right thing, wake up and say, I'm going to do what's right by the 42 million Americans in this country who rely on this essential nutrition assistance. Or am I going to starve my constituents, or am I going to appease the Marxist? Yes, GOP leadership used the word starve on camera. Johnson even painted their own clout as heroic. What's going to be harder to do, pass the funding or let millions of Americans starve? No mention that his side voluntarily risked snap cuts in a shutdown. Not to be outdone, Chief of Staff Mark Meadows concocted an equally dire narrative. If the shutdown continued, stores would run out of M&Ms. Okay, he didn't really say that, but he probably wanted to. The message was, Republicans are good guys holding back ultimate evil. Democrats are cruel villains who want children to starve. The public reality, the shutdown is hurting Americans across the board. Federal employees aren't working, food stamps were temporarily halted, and even Pentagon operations and M&Ms were squeezed. But Republicans can't just say that. Instead, they insisted all the blame goes to liberal saboteurs. For example, as ABC News noted, the Trump administration declared the well has run dry on SNAP funds and then blamed Democrats for the situation. It's a tried and true trick. We're out of money, so obviously you are holding it hostage with your shutdown. Culture war scares. Next is fear-mongering. With Congress stalled, Republicans tried a different tactic, spinning healthcare funding to undocumented immigrants. Sen. Mike Johnson stoked outrage claiming Democrats were prioritizing illegal aliens on healthcare. He railed that Democrats would rather give taxpayer-funded benefits to illegal aliens than keep the doors open for Americans. Senate Leader Chuck Schumer shot back promptly, "Not one penny goes to providing health insurance for undocumented immigrants," he declared. An ABC fact check confirmed Schumer was right. It was misinformation. Spending on health care for undocumented folks is off the table. In fact, Politico's KFF reporter Larry Levitt warned this was a massive disinformation campaign. The biggest effort at misinformation on a health policy issue since Republicans claimed that the ACA included death panels. Indeed, the lie spiked after left-wing media promoted a town hall performance, but hard data says it's false. Republicans were caught selling snake oil, claimed the floodgates are open for illegal aliens. Democrats shot back with facts. Federal funds simply cannot pay for coverage of undocumented people. Media and misinformation. The GOP spin included finger-pointing at the media too. After losing in New York City, Trump briefly lashed out that even the news is on their side and hinted big tech was censoring. In reality, the media coverage was wide open. It's more that Trump's own record was on trial. He and his circle tried throwing red meat, immigrant boogeymen, socialism, etc., but voters didn't bite. Meanwhile, on the topic of social media, Trump twisted about poll workers ready. After asserting election fraud myths, he bragged his party trained tens of thousands of poll watchers for 2026. Some in the GOP claim that GOP losses actually prove the system isn't rigged, since right after 2024, independents and moderate Republicans rejected our own candidates. Of course, Trump still clings to whatever myth he can. The con was, if you lose, just promise it was theft. It's the "if I don't win, I was robbed" playbook in action. Zero self-awareness, double down on grievance. Let's be clear, the policy fights Republicans launched in October were tone deaf. Don't scream about denying health care to migrants, you'll get called xenophobic. Don't threaten SNAP recipients, you'll sound heartless, but they tried anyway. Prominent Republicans circulated disinformation that Democrats would cut food stamps or give your money to migrants. Meanwhile, Trump's Treasury insisted social programs will expire if Congress doesn't meet a chilling message to working-class Americans. They even tried to turn the political pressure on food banks and veterans' charities to publicly shame Congress into acting. In one notorious example, Iowa Senator Joni Ernst used an appalling line, "Are we going to starve our own citizens, or are we going to fund special interests?" Calling food stamp recipients special interests. Her office quietly walked it back. But the rhetoric was ugly. Any problem, Republicans blamed Democrats trying to fund immigrants or throw money at their friends. In sum, the GOP playbook was create crises, blame others. Picture a house on fire, but instead of using the hose, Republican leaders point at the neighbors and yell, "They did it." They tried to scare voters with collapsing social safety nets, then blamed Democrats for taking credit for saving them. PolitiFact and fact-checkers had a field day debunking dozens of misstatements from November's stump speeches. As The Guardian put it, the GOP's shutdown rhetoric was not good for Republicans in voters' eyes. Apparently, voters noticed the guy causing the shutdown was also the one running around crying wolf. 4. The Great Ballroom Paradox, Trump's luxury project versus everyday hardships. Now for the pièce de résistance of symbolism, Trump's ballroom. This $350 million White House ballroom has become the punchline of Trump's priorities. As one observer quipped, in Trump world, when he says he's focusing on Main Street, he means the one in the White House. Remember that blooper moment when Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt accidentally said on camera, "The ballroom really is the president's main priority"? Whether she was joking or not, the data agree. Trump is personally obsessed with this vanity project, while ordinary Americans juggle grocery bills and rent. Let's ground this in facts. Reuters reported the entire historic East Wing of the White House was torn down to build Trump's new ballroom. That's the wing where First Ladies had offices and where staff served for decades, bulldozed for his dance floor. When asked why, Trump brushed it off. "In order to do it properly, we had to take down the existing structure," he said, claiming the old was never thought of as being much historic. "Who cares?" he said. "Easier to erase than preserve." Meanwhile, he boasted that this ballroom will be probably the finest ballroom ever built, and insisted he and some rich pals would foot the bill. Clever marketing. Taxpayers build it by federal oversight, but Trump says he's paying. Yet multiple outlets reported the White House balked at not submitting plans until after demolition, raising eyebrows about legal compliance. It's like breaking ground on a new house before any blueprints are approved. If it were your project, you'd be sued. What's more, said, Angus King blasted this plan as desecration of the White House, a betrayal of Trump's obligation to safeguard our history and heritage. That's Maine's independent senator speaking up. If a centrist flag bearer is outraged, it's bad optics. Even Trump's allies watched in stunned silence as formaldehyde-wrapped history vanished behind cranes. Embedding workers atop the Treasury building demolished the White House East Wing for Trump's ballroom. After demolition started, angry Democrats ran to Capitol Hill protesting that no permit was filed. You can't just wreck a national monument on a whim. The National Trust for Historic Preservation demanded a review, calling it legally required. Nothing happened. At the same time, Americans on social media were already screen capping the news that ballroom and butterfly bread were trending more than Putin sanctions or gas prices. One viral meme showed a luxury ballroom next to a grocery cart with skyrocketing prices, their priorities versus ours. Indeed, consider this. Rent up 8%, groceries up 10%, inflation still above target, but hey, at least the ballroom will be golden. We've heard polls where half the country disapproves of this project. That's not a swing state meme, that's a reality check. Trump's own words give it away. In the Oval, he held a model of the planned ballroom and said the fix is no cost to the country. I'm paying for this. But records show DOJ is actually trying to make you pay by billing taxpayers for his investigations. And by every credible analysis, there's no sign he or his allies have the private money lined up for the final tab. So it'll cost US taxpayers plenty. Now look at what this project cost in political capital. While Trump focused on gold leaf, voters were losing their houses. In states all across America, families are questioning leaders. You ran on wallets, but you blow our tax cash on your ballroom. The disconnect is absurd. A Midwestern farmer might ask, Mr. President, why bulldoze history to pour billions into your hobby while our corn rots because nobody can afford fertilizer? That's exactly what Democratic strategists noticed. If Trump wants something, it gets done. Ballroom, jets, gold office. But if it's about saving a farmer's peanut crop or cutting insulin costs, he shrugs. This wasn't learned in a focus group. It's baked into Trump's record. So imagine this, a White House model where one wing is missing, but above it hangs a banner, budget. $350, no expense spared, democracy's East Wing laying in rubble while millions of Americans wonder how to pay rent. This is literal Republican priorities on display. And if a graphic had to sum it up, Republicans say they fight for the working class, but their leader stacks opulence. Congress finally passes a clean continuing resolution to fund SNAP and salaries. That would actually help people. But no, Republicans refused to negotiate. Instead, out came the statues of luxury, gilded chairs, tinted beams of light, glitzy invitations. Meanwhile, families wonder if Trump's people ever thought about curling their tongues around healthcare cost instead of ballroom cost. The one time he vowed to fix Americans' lost incomes, the wall-to-wall coverage was on his lost building, the ballroom. In short, if you want to see Trump's true priorities, look at his ballroom. It's not behind the cameras, it's brick and mortar, and it couldn't be more telling. 5. Voter voices and headlines. It's the economy. Stupid even exit polls agree. Time for the Vox Populi section. We'll leave blanks for your actual man on the street clips. But even without live interviews, the headlines and exit polls tell the story. The Democrat candidates proudly gave voters what they asked for. Cheryl Hammond, NJ needs middle-class families, suburban moms, aging retirees, not free-for-all fringe issues. In her acceptance speech, she said, I fought for you. I've spoken with thousands of you. I know your struggles. your hopes, and your dreams. That's a politician talking real talk, and voters ate it up. When asked by a reporter who she'd thank first, Cheryl quipped, "I mean, I might thank my husband." The crowd laughed and cheered. Suburban comedy. Spanberger and Hashmi emphasized similar themes in Virginia. A CBS exit poll found that voters in Virginia who said the economy was their first concern voted for Democrat Spanberger. That's how news reports put it. Spanberger herself declared, Virginia chose pragmatism over partisanship, leadership that will focus relentlessly on what matters most, lowering costs, keeping our communities safe, and strengthening our economy, emphasis Spanberger's. It wasn't an empty slogan, it resonated. Nearly 60% of independents in Virginia backed her, and half the voters said inflation, the economy, was the top issue. A Madison Avenue pollster or academic would say people got what they wanted. Anecdotally, social media lit up with NJ suburban voter quotes. We got too busy trying to scare people about illegal immigrants and identity politics who forgot to talk about taxes. If we had actual vox pops, one mother might say, my grocery bill is high, my kid needs insulin, but nobody's offering help, they're off bullying a ballroom. We'll leave that dramatization to the video edit. Exit polling, in fact, became shorthand for this story. Multiple surveys showed Trump's approval cratered in these states. CNN reported Trump's disapproval at around 63% by election time. Even Republicans were nervous about this. Just after Election Day, Trump summoned GOP senators for breakfast and admitted roughly it was very Democrat areas that fell. Look at headlines. Democrats say Virginia voters rejected anti-trans platforms was one blurb on Yahoo. Republicans tried hate card. Voters rejected that. Another Seattle outlet headlined, Democrats sweep key off-year races as voters raise economic cost of living concerns. Wall Street Journal column asked, who cares about the culture war when families can't pay rent? Those weren't Fox News headlines. These were neutral or even conservative-sounding outlets acknowledging the defeat. In New York City, data showed most voters put cost of living above everything, flipping the dial from debates over statues to making the city affordable. Mamdani's victory speech clip it. Headlines like, tonight you delivered a mandate for a city we can afford. It was literally about money and, yes, a promise to freeze rents. Even Trump's old base acknowledged the real concerns. Exit polls said that in both Virginia and NJ, a majority of GOP-leaning independents said the economy was extremely important. Meanwhile, Democrats framed everything as about inflation, healthcare, and jobs. Congressional commentators noted that GOP campaigns spent most of their time on illegal immigration and woke denunciations, issues that have been losing traction with swing voters. In some segments, commentary from both sides spilled into the media. Republicans couldn't resist claiming people are too lazy to work, blaming the 1.4 million who did lose their jobs during the 2025 shutdown. Democrats responded with hard data. Unemployment was near historic lows and wage growth is stagnant. Critics pointed out how absurd it was Republicans shut down government, then tell hungry families to get off welfare. At the same time, Democratic victors gave us quotes too. Virginian Hashmi, speaking at a victory party, underlined the contrast. Virginia has chosen leadership that lifts people up instead of tearing them down. Cheryl said her win proved the girls and young women I've met know they can achieve anything, moving to tears as she invoked the blue-collar single moms in her district. By contrast, on the GOP side, even Earl Sears, the Republican loser in Virginia, begged Spanberger to represent all of us Virginians and not just some of us. It was an unsought admission that the Republicans had lost the center aisle. Polls and headlines aside, a core message was everywhere. People are feeling the pinch. Groceries are sky high. Rent is up. Drug prices are steep, and paychecks don't stretch. In focus groups, reported by NBC and others, the defining line was, it's still the economy, stupid. Democrats hung that on every rally, sign, and ad. Lower costs, ditch tariffs, save healthcare. Republicans, on the other hand, kept speaking to their own echo chamber about caravans, socialism, and riots. A Pennsylvania voter might tell you, I want someone to talk about my mortgage, not talk like I'm too stupid to manage my life. And that's exactly who showed up at the polls. In many areas, Donald Trump himself became a drag on the ticket. Exit polls showed a majority in NJ, and VA said Trump was a key factor in my vote, even off ballot. One political scientist noted, Trump's economic failures, particularly on inflation, gave Democrats a unifying theme. Voters are focused on results, and Trump has not delivered. Ouch. So out came the poll numbers, exit interviews, and victory podiums to underline the same point. Democrats ran on affordability and won. Republicans ran on nostalgia and lost. 6. How did we get here? An outdated GOP cocktail of cult of Trump plus culture wars. Before we fire up the subscribe animation, let's ponder the root cause of this dumpster fire. Why did a party that only a year ago bragged about booming polls implode so spectacularly? One big reason, policy disconnect. Analysts repeatedly said Republicans were focusing on the wrong issues. Senate Majority Leader John Thune admitted flatly that ending the shutdown, thereby ending gridlock, wasn't happening under MAGA dogma. Meanwhile, even some Republicans want a new approach, develop a distinct brand on the economy ahead of 2026, suggested a post-analysis in the face of Trump's tariffs. In other words, get off the tariff talk and focus on consumer prices. Vice President J.D. Vance himself tweeted that Republicans must make decent life affordable. These are the voices saying, the cult of Trump isn't enough. But is that happening? Republican leadership seems split. Trump wants to end the filibuster to pass their agenda. All their agenda turned out to be tax cuts and pro-Trump courts. But Senate Republicans, like John Thune and Tim Scott, said, a straight tax cut vote won't help now because the benefits come later. File your taxes in 2026 to feel it, Texas said. John Cornyn urged separating from the administration's tariffs. We need to tune back the dial on anything that's going to increase the price to the consumer, said North Carolina's Tom Tillis. On point, he blamed Trump's tariffs as directly raising costs for everyday Americans. Another GOP strategist bluntly said, separate yourselves from policies like indiscriminate tariffs that increase costs for Americans. So even some hard-right figures admit the GOP's own policies blew it: trade wars, gutting food safety nets during a potential recession, trying to repeal Obamacare entirely rather than fixing it. These made voters anxious, not enthusiastic. It's no surprise that half of Virginia independents blamed the economy. They saw who was in charge. Media echo chambers. Another layer is the media silo. Cable news and right-wing talk radio pumped out the real story on every demographic shift. Viewers heard Republicans endlessly complaining about socialism and Biden chaos while not hearing the very visible grocery lines or shuttering Main Street shops. When your donors and base see the world through a red lens, it can distort priorities. GOP TV showed clips of migrants at the border, or progressives in Congress, or protesters at airports, and kept the camera off a single working mom deciding between insulin and dinner. The result was an echo chamber, where party leaders convinced themselves that their culture war red meat must appeal to everyone. Trump-centric strategy. Then there's the self-inflicted wound of Trump himself. The Washington Post noted, Republicans are reeling after Democrats swept off-year races divided on how to course correct. Some say Trump needs to flex more muscle for 2026. Others say Congress should go its own way on the economy. But the elephant in the room is that the party's identity has become too tied to one man. As GOP strategists admitted, their muscle has limits. Base voters will turn out for Trump, but might not for unknown candidates. Josh Hawley put it bluntly, working class, low propensity voters haven't yet turned out when Donald Trump is not on the ballot. Ouch. That's basically admitting the party's mojo vanishes without Trump on stage. And Trump may not stay in office long enough for 2028. That existential threat is real. Even some GOP voices cringe at this. Virginia House Speaker Don Scott said flatly, until Republicans decide to stand up to Donald Trump and to MAGA extremism, this will continue to happen. He means it. In one breath, he celebrated Democrats' mandate, and in the next, he pleaded for Republicans to reject Trump's more radical fringes. MAGA extremism isn't just a liberal phrase. It's how Scott characterized their losing formula. Outdated policies. The GOP kept pitching ideas from 201, zero no taxes on any gain, from 199, or lock them up on immigration, or even from Nixon, tough talk to suburban women. None of those fit voters' 2026 outlook. Democrats pointed out that these policies felt antiquated. One strategist said the party must separate themselves from policies raising consumer prices. If Trump wants to keep the base happy, fine, another said. But if he wants to win midterms, he needs to change. And actually, a lot of Republican politicians know it. They just can't break the spell. A political scientist summed it up. Majorities believe that Trump has gone too far on immigration, and the GOP emphasis on culture wars did not work, giving Democrats a unified message. Voters simply saw results versus rhetoric. Democrats kept their message tight, jobs and healthcare. GOP had soundbites and lawsuits. Reaction from 2026. Now with 2026 on the horizon, the panic is setting in. Even conservative outlets are analyzing, if base voters only come for Trump, what does that mean for Congress races? One CNN report said, by November 2025, Democrats pulled ahead on handling the economy, Trump's signature issue. That's brutal. It's like any success Republicans claim is undercut by the question, so what? When will average people feel it? Even the Post noted, Congress is stuck and taxes may only feel good after midterms, way too late. The GOP has yet to pass a big anti-inflation bill, shutdown aside. So Democrats can keep saying they promised relief, but they only delivered chaos. Media spin versus reality. Ultimately, the GOP is running on a narrative of grievance. They'll get airtime to grumble about polls, lawsuits, big tech censorship, but voters have real lives. And it should in this midterm. Instead of asking how to make things work, Republicans are asking who to blame. In one revealing moment after the vote, Trump expressed mild bewilderment to GOP senators. I'm not sure it was good for anybody, but it was very Democrat areas. VirginiaMcCurry.com. Translation, the rich coast states, of course not for Republicans, but Democrats apparently found it very good. The AP pounded this. Republicans won nothing on election day, headlined an analysis. If your coastal losses strategy just means you can only win when you lose, maybe consider a new strategy. So why outdated policies, outraged base, and a feedback loop of Trump-centric paranoia? Republicans bet the farm on culture and authoritarian appeals, and the voters called their bluff. The GOP ends up with the legacy of an expensive ballroom and a shrunk majority, unless something changes. 7, reflection, are we awake, America? All right, America, let's be real for a sec. How much of this is about the illusion of leadership versus reality? We've seen the facts on screen. Trump built a monument to his ego, literally, in Washington. Meanwhile, seniors, workers, immigrants, factory owners are living it day to day. When you market yourself as a savior of the forgotten man and woman, but your own first lady's old office becomes rubble for your dance hall, it begs a question. Who holds our leaders accountable when the polls crash? If powerful people can bulldoze history or fabricate stories without consequence, what's left? The spectacle of a $350M ballroom built to not touch the White House, it did, or the latest Trump tweet storm about patriotism means I can't pay my employees unless Dems agree. It all starts to feel like a very bad comedy. But here's the deal. We know this isn't sustainable. Voters are already telling us what matters. If we ignore it, democracy's hollow. This isn't just about one party losing an election. It's about how we define success and failure in leadership. Do we want leaders who measure success by rallies and grudges, or by results we can feel in our lives? Ask yourself, if a politician spends your tax dollars on projects you'll never use, who pays the price? If it's your wallet, remember that next time ads promise tax cuts or better living costs. If a leader tears down history for vanity, what does that tell us about respecting our shared past or our shared future? So tomorrow, grab your morning coffee and reflect, what do I expect my leaders to build? A ballroom for a president or a bridge for the middle class? If we don't demand accountability, all we'll get are more gilded dirt piles. It's not just about Trump or Democrats. It's about demanding that the illusion of leadership ends and reality begins. These election results should be a wake-up call, but will we wake up? Are we paying attention or just watching the greatest political show on earth? The choice, our choice, is in the next chapter. 8, call to action. Let's talk, think, and make change. If this rundown got your blood boiling or giggling in disbelief, here's what you can do. Subscribe for more hard-hitting analysis with a side of satire on politics. Comment below, which excuse from the GOP do you find most outrageous? Share this video to friends or family who need a dose of reality mixed with humor. We've shown you the scoreboard and the soundbites. Now it's on you, readers, viewers, citizens, to question the status quo. Are we comfortable with a leadership that prioritizes ballrooms over breadlines? If not, speak up. Because the next midterm is just around the corner, and unless America insists on real accountability, the same illusions will play on loop. Remember, the next time someone tries to tell you Republicans are fighting for average people, point them to the ballroom. Because in 2025 and beyond, it's clear whose interests are waltzing in that dazzling new White House wing.